Ever wondered how long the demon Jacksonville rapper Julio Foolio would be locked up if he would be alive and charged for all his alleged crimes? After spending days looking through court records, legal documents, and street rumors, one thing is clear: Foolio would spend a long time behind bars. So today, I'll be breaking down all of Julio Foolio's alleged crimes, from minor offenses to serious felonies, and calculating just how long he would be spending behind bars. Foolio came up on the north side of Jacksonville, in one of the most active areas of the city called 6 Block. He told Cam Capone News that he lost his first homie at just 15 years old. By the time he was 20, he had already lost 15 friends to the streets, so there's no wonder he got into a lot of legal trouble. Let's kick things off with an incident from June 2021. Foolio was arrested in Jacksonville on a felony gun possession charge. According to authorities, Foolio was found with a firearm while being a convicted felon, which is a serious crime in Florida. Because he couldn't be caught lacking, he didn't really care about that, but the charge itself was a third-degree felony. Let's also consider the broader context of this charge. In Florida, gun laws are notoriously strict, especially when it comes to convicted felons. The state has a reputation for having a zero-tolerance policy on gun-related crimes, so Foolio being caught with a firearm, whether it was for self-defense or not, could have pushed his sentence higher, especially since he already had a bad rep with the Jacksonville police. This charge could have gotten him up to 5 years in prison. But we're only getting started. Going back a couple of years to 2018, when Foolio got into more trouble, this time in the form of evading the police. So cops tried to pull over a car he was in, but instead of stopping, the driver, someone in his gang, took off because they had guns in it. Foolio and the others inside allegedly ran when the car was stopped. While fleeing from the police in a vehicle may seem like a minor misdemeanor, in Florida, it gets so much more serious. Attempting to flee in a vehicle is considered a third-degree felony, punishable by up to 5 years behind bars. If Foolio had been caught and convicted, it could have been a big setback for his career and his freedom. Now, let's talk about the crazy incident on Instagram Live that made headlines back in 2021. Foolio was out here streaming on IG when he got shot at, live, in front of his fans. Talk about a nightmare scenario, right? The dude barely dodged death. Foolio even said he knew who was behind the whole thing, but no one was arrested.
All the odds that's on a foot shot don't count as get back. Go pick your mans up. I don't want to talk.
Things started getting spicy when rumors began swirling that Foolio might have retaliated. Now, if the law connects him to any of that get back, he's looking at charges like attempted murder or aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Those charges don't play in Florida. If he's convicted, he could be facing a minimum of 15 years in the state pen. The thing is, if the cops got some hard evidence, that time could shoot up real fast. Alright, let's roll it back to 2017 when Foolio was on probation for some undisclosed charges. At this point, he had already been living life on the edge. But when you're on probation, you gotta walk that tight rope. But nah, Foolio didn't stay clean. He violated the terms of his release. Now, depending on how bad the violation is, you could be looking at up to a year in jail. But that's the light sentence. The real nightmare? If the court decides you broke probation in a major way, they can reinstate your original sentence. Meaning, if Foolio had a heavy charge hanging over him before probation, he could have been sent back to serve that full time. Imagine getting sentenced for something that happened years ago and facing decades in prison just because of one mistake. That's the kind of gamble you take when you violate probation, and Foolio was rolling that dice. In 2019, Foolio was caught up in a wild drive-by shooting in Jacksonville. And no, he wasn't the shooter, he was the target. His car got sprayed with bullets, but the drama didn't stop there. Word on the street was that Foolio might have retaliated, and in Florida, retaliation ain't just street politics. It's a serious crime. If the law could prove he had anything to do with a get-back on his enemies, he'd be looking at major charges. Aggravated assault, attempted murder, both of those could land him behind bars for decades. Attempted murder alone carries a minimum of 25 years in Florida, and if the case was strong enough, it could mean life in prison. Even if he wasn't the trigger man, just being linked to that act could still land him in serious legal trouble. Prosecutors don't play when it comes to gun violence, and Foolio's name being tied to anything like that would have had the courts coming down hard. If Foolio really tried to get back at his ops, he might have dodged bullets that night, but he wouldn't be able to dodge the justice system forever. Police have been monitoring Foolio for some time and have begun to harbor suspicions regarding his connections with organized crime. RICO cases are generally aimed at entire criminal organizations, and should he be slapped with one, Foolio would be facing the consequences. If the feds manage to gather enough evidence linking him to any criminal enterprise, he could be facing up to 30 years in federal prison. It's not a joke being investigated on a federal level, and federal agents don't joke around when taking down entire networks. Now, let's rewind all the way back to 2015 when Foolio was just a young buck, only 16 years old. Allegedly, he got caught up in an attempted murder case, and word on the street was that he was involved in a shooting. The case never went far, but just think about that attempted murder at 16. If that charge had stuck, Foolio would have been looking at a mandatory minimum of 25 years to life behind bars. That's decades locked away before he had a chance to blow up in the rap game. A charge like that ain't just a setback, it's the kind of thing that takes away everything. No music career, no fame, nothing but a prison cell and a future that's already been decided. It's crazy to think how different his life could have been if the system got his hands on him way back when. Now things get real grim. People started throwing around heavy rumors that Foolio might have been involved in some serious retaliatory shootings. After some of his homies and associates got taken out, word on the street is that Foolio could have been involved in planning or even assisting with a murder. That's a whole different level of crime. The idea of him being connected to a murder isn't just speculation, it's about potential charges that could have him locked up for decades. And if that's true and the authorities build a strong enough case, Foolio could face felony murder charges. Under Florida's felony murder rule, the consequences are harsh. If convicted, he'd be looking at a mandatory minimum of 40 years in prison with the possibility of life behind bars if the judge is feeling generous. Now, when you add up all the charges against Foolio, we're talking about a possible 260 years in prison. That's a life sentence if everything were proven in court.